Yeah, okay, the Gentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation, knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Gentry. The Gentry Podcast. The Gentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to the Gentry Podcast. Today, we have an incredible guest, and as always, I'm your host, Jonathan Mason. But more importantly than that, we have Kamal Johnson, who is the mayor of Hudson, New York. How you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
The excitement is mutual. Your background is incredible, and you're leading an incredible city. But before we jump into that, I gotta ask. So, what's the special sauce? What makes Hudson the best place to live in the United States?
Yeah, so Hudson is very unique, especially being a part of New York State. So Hudson is an inner city that's kind of wrapped around a very rural chemistry. So you can have fine dining and coffee shops and, high-end boutiques. And then literally you can walk or drive 5 minutes and you could be kayaking and hiking and, all of the things that upstate New York brings.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I love that. The duality. You get the city feel, so you go all the shops and the dining. My wife would appreciate that. And then getting out.
Down.
Yeah, man, I gotta go check you out. But funny enough, she played in New York State professionally when there was an upstate New York soccer team. But I haven't made it, but I definitely will after this. And hearing your background and how you got to do what you do, I don't want to spoil it yet, but just tell me. I'll ask you straight up. Did you always know you wanted to be the mayor when you were a youngster? What was your upbringing like? How did you get to run in such an incredible city?
Yeah, my upbringing was pretty rough. I'm one of four boys, the only one not to go to prison or to currently be in prison. I was raised by a single mom who battled addiction and, different issues, especially, mental health with me, myself and my brothers. We were a very close-knit group of five people kind of navigating through a life. I would say I didn't know I wanted to be mayor until I got to my later years in high school. And I was getting in a lot of trouble in school. And one of my teachers, my English teacher, Miss Brust, pulled me aside one day and she took me out in the hallway and she said, everybody listens to everything you say. They have to hang on every word. They're, kind of waiting for what's next from you. Like she was like, you're like the mayor of the classroom. So as a joke, I took that idea and I created a sign that said, Kamal for mayor, and I hung it up in her classroom. And, it was just a thought and a joke and became like a nickname. But when I really started to kind of focus in on my community, that's when the thought of it really became like, all right, maybe this, nickname and this joke should actually be a priority and I should, look into this.
That is incredible. I learned a lot there. First and foremost, you're resilient, my brother. What you have gone through and how you speak of it. You spoke of how it just made you more of a tight-knit family and more together. And that definitely resonated with me. Sometimes things that aren't great that have happened even in my childhood have just made my family tighter. And I love how you focus on that too. How important to all the teachers out there watching. You speak life into children.
Your
Like,
words matter.
words matter. Wow. What she said, like you have the charisma, the presence, the gift to gab too. And people are listening to the words that you share and how that nickname stuck with you, but then later almost influence. Like I always say, I love leaders that have like a calling on your life. It felt like you, in my opinion, had a calling in your life from a young age. That's so impressive. So work me through how it got from working into community to actually running. Like what was it like to think about and then actualize those words again to actually running for mayor?
Right thing. If I'm not doing the right thing, I have to be able to live by what I tell them, and I have to be able to kind of give them that some person to look up to in an area where we don't have a lot of black teachers, we don't have a lot of black leaders. So I wanted to become one of those people that they can say, like, if he did it, I can do it a million times better. And for me, that moment kind of came when we were discussing the youth center, which is one of the organizations that saved my life, because I was one of my first jobs. That was where I went as a kid, to play basketball and to do all the things you do. And I went there, and what I saw was a great investment in that youth center. It was filthy. There was no programming. It was nothing like I remember. So I went to the meetings and I said, look, I want to help out. You don't have to pay me. I'm a youth worker. Like, I have all these ideas to make it better. And like, that's something that we really want to do. And they kept telling me, you got to be at the table. There's a process. It's budgeting. It's not as easy as it sounds. There's all these things. And they kept giving me all these excuses. So I ran for council in a ward that was only 7% minority. Talked about a lot of issues that no one was talking about, like mental health, like our young people, all of the things, gentrification, and all these things that were happening in our community. And I ended up becoming, a councilman in the first ward. And then after that, I kind of saw like the steps to become mayor and to really make some of my ideas come to fruition. Because in order for what I wanted to accomplish to happen, I had to go take the next step to be mayor. So I was like, maybe that journey from back in 11th grade can become a reality. And here I am.
And that is incredible. I think one of the big things that I take away from this is a lot of people say they want change and they want to see change in your community. But even before you were an elected official, you said, hey, this is something that I see, something that is important to me. How can I help with the youth center? How can I make it so the programming is there? And then that sets you on a pathway to become an elected official. And even when you got there, it seems like it's like, hey, the journey
Yeah,
has honestly just begun. If I'm kind of hearing it right, and then it led to you to fulfilling those dreams, man. That is incredible. So, could you tell us a little more about the city? What are the demographics? What are also some of the strategic goals that you guys have put in place since it's been?
yeah, it's a very interesting city. We have a dwindling black population, which was very prominent growing up in here in Hudson. I'm someone who's homegrown. I went to school here. My first jobs here. Everything that I do is planted and rooted in the city of Hudson. So I've seen so many changes over the years. Especially when COVID hit, we saw gentrification kind of accelerate. Hudson became a place for diversity, and then that kind of transitioned to it's a place for artists, and then it became high-end restaurants. And as the more and more Hudson started getting popular, the more and more we started to really lose the soul of the city, which is like the people. So my efforts are to keep people who want to be here, who want to raise families here, and who want to build community here to be able to stay here and maintain life here.
That's an important issue, and I think I'm gonna share this with you, the one that's near and dear to my heart. When you talk about the Gentry podcast, that is a play on that G word that you stated of gentrification, which can mean displacement and extracting value from the community, providing it to those who aren't necessarily of the community, versus gentrification with a J. And how I see it is providing long term value to long-term residents. But there's no easy fix there. I've seen it personally. I have family that were my dad grew up in DC, and DC has changed quite significantly from even when I was just a child. And I have family out in Inglewood, and we're seeing over the past 10 years, it looks totally different in California out there than it did when we were growing up. And I used to go to my aunt's house. And we see it nationally, but you're seeing it every day. So
Yeah,
how I know it's the $1 billion question if
yeah,
if you can answer that, but what are some of the ways that you're addressing it as best you can?
yeah. For us, Hudson is a tale of two cities. We have Warren Street, which is one of the richest blocks in the state. You literally can buy $300 socks across the street from where I'm at right now. And then a half a block over, there's extreme poverty. Literally a half a block is extreme poverty. It's tough. So for me, I had to look at it through a wide lens of, planning. So we looked at housing, we looked at initiatives, we are looking at, social justice movements, we're looking at, putting people in positions where, they can bring other people up. One of the most amazing things that I've been able to be a part of since I've been mayor is our universal basic income initiative. And that's something that we partnered with the Spark of Hudson, the Utopia Foundation. I did some town halls with Andrew Yang, who was a former presidential candidate. So we have 127 people in our community that are receiving $500 a month over the course of 5 years. It's the longest term pilot in the nation. And that money is unrestricted. So they're able to use it for whatever they want. If they want to buy, themselves a nice dinner, that is okay. If they want to pay, their bills, that is okay. And basically, what it's showing is like when people have a little more to meet their general needs, what they do is meet their general needs. And it takes off a lot of stress. It raises self-esteem. It changes a lot of that dynamic where we have families where, a single parent is working 3, 4 jobs. If they're able to cut down to 2 jobs, they're able to be there for their kids in school. They're able to attend the play that they couldn't attend or the basketball game. That is like one of the initiatives that I'm, very proud to be a part of.
Wow, that is impressive. And I have heard different pilots about UBI, but it's nice to finally get to speak to somebody. And so, when did the pilot start, and when does it finish?
So it started in 2020, and first we started with 25 people, and then it went into 50 to now we're at 127. So it's very stagnant on when it's going to end. Some will be ending, this year. But one of the good things is that, we provided people with opportunities for financial wellness and, credit building and all these things to kind of set them up for success when the program ends. I'm also a part of the Mayors for Guaranteed Income, where we're looking at all the data from all of our pilots, over 100 mayors and pilots across the nation, who are looking to hopefully make this a state or federal initiative.
That's impactful. And yeah, like I was very curious. So it sounds like it's widespread with 100 mayors across the nation. Are there any early insights that you've seen, or are there any expected outcomes?
Yeah,
Terms of federal legislation potentially, but what are some of the
there's
insights?
legislation on the table. There's a lot that has to do on the ground, especially because we have recipients that receive money from the Department of Social Service, whether that's SNAP benefits, retirement, or any type of extra supplemental income. So we have to be very careful on how we roll this out so that it doesn't interfere with people's food stamps or pensions or anything like that, because we want it to be open to everyone that needs it. For us in Hudson, our only regulations was that you had to be 18 or older and at or under the median income line. For us, the makeup of the people who are receiving this, or the recipients, make up what our city truly looks like.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. I think this is a great opportunity to see a long term study that is providing the support that people need. And it's not like, and trust me, I have a huge penchant in my heart for people that are, just trying to survive and need that help. But it also sounds like there's such a cross section of folks from just below you said like the 18 to above 18 and below the median. That is such a cross section of people, just to see how that extra income can support their long term endeavors. Very curious to see how it works. I'm hoping for the best, and I can't wait to see some legislation or whatever comes from it because that is a huge thing. And I know I'm harking on it a lot, but how is it funded? Was this all privately funded?
Yeah, so this was all private funded, which was great because we wanted to, as we're rolling it out, wanted to be able to say, this is not taxpayer funded. And that always, has red tape or it has stereotypes or different feelings about. So this was totally private funded by the Utopia, Sparka Hudson, Humanity Forward, those organizations who, have networks that have done this work. Happy that we were able to do it privately, but seeing the results and seeing the way it's changed people's lives, I think it should be something that should be state or federally funded. I mean, we've had people that have gotten out of that bad domestic violence relationships because they didn't have that money to move. We've had people that were facing eviction that were able to stay. We've had a parent who was receiving this initiative that passed away. Her family is raising her kids, and we were able to transfer, that program to the family, which is, a huge help in a situation where somebody, passes away unexpectedly.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that it is private funded. I agree. I think if it were, unfortunately, if it were taxpayer funded, people would say, well, is this the best use? Which that's not, not how I feel, but they would ask, like, hey, is this the
Especially in
best use?
today's political climate.
For sure. For sure. I think you would get a lot of pushback. But, having people from the private sector, philanthropists, whatever they may look like to, at least fund the pilot, then you can get the data, you can figure it out and see, is this something worth moving forward with long term at a larger scale. But I definitely applaud you there. Like that is some great work that is being done. Now, shifting to Hudson specifically, one of the big things when it comes to a burgeoning city, like, I mean, it's how the guys are kind of blowing up. How do you look at housing, and specifically within the housing? I'd like to create a question as every community is looking for that cradle to grave community, one where you can come out of high school, get a good job or get your first job or go to school. And then after school, you're looking for maybe a affordable apartment or just an apartment place, roommates, to having a small family, maybe having a starter home or an apartment still, to, you matured in your career. Now you have the long-term house. And then you get on the other side, kids are out of the house. Now you want to potentially, downsize. You want to age in place though, because you're still of that community. How do you think Hudson is doing? And then what are some of the things that you guys are maybe looking at to make it so, at least from a housing standpoint, how that can be done?
Yeah, that's our biggest platform item. We right now have a pipeline of housing. We have on Mill Street a new development that will provide a little over 70 units of affordable housing, as well as washers and dryers and different amenities in these homes. And it's going to be completely, earth friendly and things like that, because we want to make sure that our city is clean air for the future. We have another project that would be going in on State Street. That would be about 30 to 40 units. We just finishing up a project that we partnered with the developer, the Gallon Foundation, which is another almost 60 units of housing. So with those combined, it's a start. It's not, the overall fix, but also we wanted to look at, our property owners now. So we've given out over 3 million in grants to property owners to make sure they're bringing out their homes up to code, especially, during after COVID, so many people don't have the finances to kind of fix where their houses should be, and they want to remain in them, especially if they have rental units that they can use to offset costs. We've used grants to kind of bring those back online to help out. So we have to look at housing through a wide perspective. We don't have a homeless shelter in our city or in our county. So we see a large proportion of people going into hotels that are usually outside of the city of Hudson, outside of the area services. So one of the things that we're working on is a wellness hub that will have permanent and temporary housing for people to kind of take them through that stage of the shelter, temporary housing, permanent housing, into, a career. And on that wellness hub, we'll also, have resources for mental health services, any type of health services, as well as if you're dealing with substance abuse issues. Our county is one of the always in the top 5 for overdoses, in the state. So we want to make sure we provide those opportunities to people to get help.
Wow, that is a tough statistic. That is a tough statistic, but I love that when I asked a very deliberate question about the traditional journey from 18-year-old just getting a job through retirement, you inputted, well, there's a non-traditional pathway that needs to be addressed. And I think that was very key, that the leader of the community is always thinking about those that may have a different trajectory. And that's how you help. That's how, that issue across the nation, addiction, and then, tertiary to that mental health is so important. And it takes leaders like yourself to be focused on what the future can look like, to make sure that all residents can be served. Because that's what the role is, to serve. And now we spoke a lot about housing. Another aspect of that cradle to grave is employment and jobs. Are there any industries that you guys are focused on bringing in, or are there any industries that in the future that you may be focused on potentially bringing in?
Yeah, so right now in Hudson, the largest employer is our hospital, and currently they have over 200 open positions. Hospitality is also a big employer here, but with the cost of living being so high, it's hard to find those people that can work these hospitality jobs, these bars, these restaurants, and then be able to afford, the high cost of living. So for me, it's really a push to make sure that we fill these jobs at our hospitals and our clinics, and then look to bring in more jobs, whether they're remote, have the Amtrak here right in town, and it's one of the busiest stops. I think the second busiest stop in the state. So there are opportunities for people to work outside the city, but we want to bring in more industry here, especially when it comes to everything that's happening around the world in solar and tech and AI. We want to make sure that our residents get a chance to be a part of that growth.
Yeah, I think that is and I've heard this in some other places, like totally different, but like Lake County in Colorado, they're surrounded by the Vales and the Aspens and those places, but people will either live in the community and work somewhere else, or work outside the community, and then they're trying to get them to commute in, which is sometimes just a little bit difficult. But yeah, no, I definitely hear you. When working either on the housing side with developers or on bringing in industry, what's your tool belt? What do you guys kind of use to incentivize, be it like anything like tax abatements to
Yeah, it's
cutting?
definitely pilots, you know, any type of tax issues to help people remain and keep things affordable. One of the things we ran into at one of our senior housing that was just sold to a new developer, we wanted to make sure that those seniors were able to maintain their rents. If any of them are Section 8, we wanted to maintain Section 8 property. So we had to work directly with the state and the new developer to make sure that, this stays affordable for our seniors. And, we ended up working with a really good developer who is going to revitalize all the homes. Nobody is going to be displaced while like this is being done. So it's an exciting project that's happening, at Providence Hall here in Hudson, where, people are going to see investments in their homes that they haven't seen for, 25, 30 years.
You guys are putting your money where your mouth is, and that's all you can ask.
Yeah. But people have to see it. It's like when I was first running and I was knocking on doors and I was, giving my campaign speeches and your elevator speeches, a lot of people, especially in black and brown communities, are like, it doesn't matter who's in charge. I'm still going to be in poverty. Life is still going to be life. Nothing is going to change. So until you make that change directly on the ground, people aren't going to really feel you.
That's important, and I think when they see it, they can now see that you are a good steward, and your community is a good steward of taxpayer dollars. I think from what from my seat, as I speak to a lot of people across the nation, people just want to, like my dad would always say, make it make sense. Why you are doing is positive and making an impact. When I can see that impact, I can feel that impact. I think that definitely makes it easier for me to believe that you are doing what you need to do. When I start to, and I know this is important to you because it's kind of how it all got started. We're seeing, like, we do a lot of surveys and studies with young people, specifically around civic engagement, and then also between jumping into a career of public service. How are you and how is your community kind of outreaching and interacting with the younger generation?
Yeah, I mean, that's my biggest push. I was selected over the past 3 years, the 4 years, I was the commencement speaker for the graduation class, selected by the students. So, being there and being a face and being someone that they could recognize and, talk to and, know my story and know like where they come from, it's just the beginning. So, given direct investment into the youth. I've worked with organizations like Greater Hudson Promise Neighborhood, which I was a co-founder on, and showing students and kids that there's a different way, and that's from cradle to career, not just a guy here that's running for position or in a position. I'm living this. I have a child that's in the school district that I want the best for, kid who grew up in this area and knows, exactly where the pitfalls are, even when it comes to things like employment and housing. I remember, you know, years before I became mayor, being in a situation where I was working for a youth organization and I got a raise, and that raise took me $100 over the threshold from the housing. So I had to really sit and be like, making more money has actually become bad for me. So it's like, do I turn down this promotion and be able to stay in the housing, or do I take it and then go out there and not know basically what the housing landscape is? And for me, it worked out. But I think how many people are in that situation where they get to a point where you don't want to take that peak because you lose that safety net. And, sometimes we're not getting the best of what people can be when it's like that.
Yeah, that is something that is not spoken of too often. How there is a point where that extra marginal dollar can have a
Yeah.
greater effect on a lot of things that that extra dollar isn't going to pay for. So yeah, that is definitely something, and you hit something very important to everything that I'm doing. And my goal is to make sure that young people are at least aware, civically aware is like the first step, and then potentially getting into public service. One of the things that we saw in the survey was representation was such a big thing. So seeing somebody that they can resonate with, seeing somebody who looks a little bit like them or a little bit younger. So I do think what you said is very important. Like I have the data to prove it that it is impactful. So I appreciate you living out that representation and sharing your story. And I hope that our viewers really appreciate it. And I know they will, just literally just based off the data. But if you had any advice for a young person, a lot of our viewers are 18 to around 24, maybe thinking about going into a career of public service or effectuate change in their community in some way. What a piece of advice may you give that person?
I would say the biggest advice that I could give is don't let anyone determine when your time is or what your future is. When I first announced I was running for mayor or even thinking about politics, like people laughed, like literally laughed in my face. I had people that I grew up around that told me it'll never happen or it's not going to work. And, even people in the political realm that I looked up to, some of them were like, it's not your time. It's just not your time. Wait a few years, do this, go through this path and do that. And I was just like, I felt it. I felt it and I knew what my time was and I knew what I wanted to accomplish. So, I was all in. So I would tell people to, bet on yourself, young people, all the time, every time. No one knows you better than you know you.
I think that's great advice. Bet on yourself, and you never know. Like, even, God forbid, obviously it happened, but if you didn't win the race, you would have learned so much and created contacts and created connections, and you would have known what it would take to win the next time. So I definitely, I'm glad that it worked out. But to the young people, like, even if it doesn't work out, you still gain the knowledge of the
Exactly.
process and those connections that come with that. So I love that advice. I second that. Bet on yourself, no matter what it is. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Who else gonna bet on you if you're not betting on yourself?
Exactly.
I forget. I don't know who it was. I think it was like Chris Rock or something. He was saying, my car broke down on the side of the road, and I put my thumb up and I was telling him to help me. But when I got out the car and started pushing, somebody pulled over and then started to help.
That's real.
Yeah, people like to see, like, if you put that effort out, then
Yeah.
like-minded people can come to you. So I definitely think that's great advice. Now, I've heard a lot of good things about Hudson, and I've heard some things that you're working on. So if you want to say something that you stated before, totally fine. But I gotta ask because I wouldn't be doing my job.
I mean, number one for me would be, better youth center. This is a place that historically has helped so many people over generations. And it's a building that needs investment. It's not big, it's, not exciting, but it's a place where kids go to be kids and kids go to see people like them in places of leadership. So I would love to expand on that to the fact that it would be a bigger building, classrooms, swimming pool, all of the amenities that a youth center should have. So if money wasn't the option, that would be my first investment.
I love that, and that speaks to who you are. Just putting the youth first, and I think that when you talk about betting on yourself, if you're not betting on yourself, the next best bet is betting on the youth
Yeah,
because
the
they
next
are the
generation.
yeah, they are the most important. It's funny. I speak to people all the time, and every city will have like Plan 2035 or Plan 2050. It's like, okay. Now, when you think about who the people are that you're going to be serving, and they're not
Not the
your
ones currently
peers.
sitting. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. They are probably in somebody's middle school classroom right
yeah.
now. So you got to really interact with those people and understand what their needs are going to be. So I love the fact that you're thinking about that. Now, let's fast forward to the future. What are the residents, the community members going to be talking about Hudson in 20 years? What are they going to be saying?
Yeah, my hope is that in 20 years, and we just went through our comprehensive plan, we build a city that is for people who want to be here, want to be rooted here, raise families here, and they don't have to live in fear. I think every time something new happens in Hudson, there's a fear of pushback, of being pushed out. There's a fear of, everything being changed from what you grew up and the traditions that you love being erased. And, I want Hudson to grow, but I also want it to maintain those traditions and those people and those families that really make people from the outside visit and say, you know what, I want to live here. I want to live here because of what I've seen and what I witnessed and what also this place can be.
I think that's powerful. And it's so delicate because it's when people are attracted to the city, they're attracted there by the maybe it's the art scene or the food or the community events and like and the people. And then it's like when you come into the city and you take all that away, are you even still attracted to that city? Or could
No,
you have just
yeah,
stayed in wherever you left?
it's exactly the way it feels sometimes. It's like, yeah, I fell in love with the city, but now I want to change everything about it.
Yeah, no, I think that if we can answer that right now on this podcast, I think we, we exactly, we'd be beyond ready. Yeah, you have all the youth centers you just shake your hat at. But and before we end up, I'd love to ask there anything you think we missed or just anything that it doesn't have to be to the youth now, just to anybody, any last words that you love to give to the viewer.
I would say, it's important to have mentors. I had people who I looked up to and people who pointed me in the right directions and had similar makeups of my life or very different ones as well. And being able to rely on people, and it doesn't have to be monetary or anything like that, but just relying on people to be consistent is so important for the upbringing of any young person. And that's one of the things that I always try to remain when I'm working with young people is consistent. If I say I'm going to see you every Wednesday at 3, every Wednesday at 3, I gotta see you. And you gotta put that effort in.
I think that's a great message. Everybody needs a mentor, a sounding board, encouragement, support. And if you aren't pouring into your community in the same way that somebody's pouring into you, I think you're missing a boat. So it sounds like you've had great mentors,
Yeah,
but you're
absolutely.
also consistent with the people that you're able to mentor that are coming behind you.
Yeah,
And that was one thing I took away from this. You got to bet on yourself, but you also got to bet on that next generation because they're the ones, and hopefully, we can lay the foundation for the long term and longitudinal change that they can create. So maybe you and your cohort of mayors start the process of UBI and test a pilot, but then the next cohort of people come and they create that 10, 20-year study that really gets it over the hump. So
yeah.
I'm proud that you're pouring into your community. Thank you. And then without further ado, where can people reach out to you if they want to learn more about Hudson or just hear more about your impressive story? What's the
Yeah,
best means for
you
them
can
to reach
find
out?
me on Instagram, Kamal Johnson. You can check out our city, cityofhudson.org. Wherever there's social media, I'm under my name. And I tell a lot of the stories that, I've told here. So, we always look for reasons to branch out and to network and to help because that's, how you get things done. So I appreciate you for having me on today.
The pleasure's all mine. I've learned a lot, and it's definitely given me hope. Give me a lot of hope around, one big issue, we
Yeah,
talked about. I was like, that is a huge issue across the nation, but it sounds like you're really pounding the pavement and trying to create a solution. So for everyone here at Gentry, we want to say thank you to you and to the viewers and everyone. Once again, we had Kamal Johnson, the mayor. The mayor since 11, the moniker was given to him in 11th grade, made it into fruition, and now is the mayor of Hudson, New York. So without further ado, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll catch you next time.